Hi, it's Ms. Alexander, and we're going to talk today about Lesson 1.17. I'd like you to say these words after me. Pens, lads, ends. What did you hear in the final position of all these words? Did you hear a zzz sound? I did. Let's take a look at what these words look like. So, we've got pens, lads, and ends. I don't see the letter Z there, and that's what I would normally think of that makes the Z sound. So what is making the Z sound in these words? That's right, the final S. Great. So what would happen if I covered up these S's here? Are those still words? Let's see. Pen, lad, in. Oh, so all of these are base words. And tell me what a base word is. Do you remember? Base word is a plain word with nothing added to it. That's correct. Okay, so let's look at these again. And what does that S mean, that S is? The letter S is then the suffix. And tell me what a suffix is? That's correct. A suffix is a letter or group of letters added to a base word, and we code those with a box. Great job. And you remember put it together? That's right. Base word plus a suffix is a derivative. Great job. So back to these words. I don't need that S at the end of these words. Those are words without it. So that means these S's are suffixes. But wait a minute. Doesn't S usually say S? Why do these S's at the end, these suffix S's, say Z? Let's think about that for a minute. What else can make it change its sound? Well, let's look at these words. Pins. Oh, wait a minute. Did you hear that? Pins. Is that N voiced or unvoiced? It's voiced. Lads. Wait a minute. Did you hear that D? Is it voiced or unvoiced? D. It's also voiced. And we know that it is voiced. So does that mean that when I have a voiced consonant at the end of a base word before the suffix S, that S is going to make a voiced sound? It did in pens, lads, and ends. Great job. Let's look at this card. So we already had this card in our suffix deck. The consonant suffix S means more than one, and we know that it means tips. But now we just learned something new, that it also has example of pens making the Z sound when the final consonant in the base word is voiced, just like that S is being voiced. All right, so let's look at some of these words again. Now, if we were to go ahead and take these words and code them. Let's look at how we code them. Awesome. Okay. So, what kind of a syllable is this? That's right, it's closed because it ends in a consonant, and we know that this is the suffix S. We already talked about how we didn't need that S. So we're going to put a breve here. And you know, we're going to do something. We're going to put a line through this S to remind ourselves that that S is making a voice sound. Okay, let's get rid of these over here because they get in my way. So then now let's read this word. Pens. Good job. Okay, now let's go to this next word. What kind of a syllable is that? You're right, that one is also a closed syllable, and we're going to put it with a breve. Great. Now let's go ahead and box that S. Now that D, it is voiced, so let's put a line through it to remind ourselves that's going to make a voice sound. So let's read that word. Lads. Great job. Okay, let's look at this last word down here. There's several things I want to do to this one. First, we're going to box it. Ooh, my box went a little crazy. We're going to cross out one of those N's. I knew you'd notice that because two N's together make one sound. And we're going to put a brief because it's a closed syllable. So let's read this. Ins. So we know what pins are, like pins. We've talked about that word before. Lads. Do you remember what a lad is? A lad is a boy. That's right. And inns. An inn is like a hotel that you can stay in. Great job. You're doing excellent. Okay, let's look at some more words. Great. So let's go ahead and look at the words in this reading practice. Okay, let's look at this first word. Do I need that S at the end of the word? Let's figure it out. What kind of a syllable is it? Well, it's closed, so we're going to mark it with a brief. Now let's try and read it without the S and see if it's a word. Let me hear you. Land. That's right. So this S is a suffix. We're going to put a box around it. And remember, what did we decide about D? It's voiced. So we're going to put a line through it. This suffix S. I know it's a little hard to read. It's hard to write with my mouse. Let's read it. Lands. Now I'm going to tell you a little secret. At the top it says suffix S equals S or Z. So all of these S's at the end are going to be suffixes. So we're not going to keep going through that process. We're just going to practice finding out if it's going to make the sound or the Z sound. All right, let's move on. Okay, the next word. We know this is a suffix S because I already told you that little secret. So we now got to figure out if it's voiced or unvoiced. First of all, what kind of syllable? Closed. You knew that. Is that invoiced or not or unvoiced? It's voiced, so this is going to be voiced as well. So read that word. Pens. Great. Okay, here we go. Another closed syllable. Mark it with a brief. Suffix box for that S. Is it closed? Is it voiced or unvoiced? Well, let's look at the T. T, t, t. That's not voiced. So this is going to stay unvoiced as well. So it's going to say S. So go ahead and read that word. Pits. Great job. All right, let's look at this word. Oh, okay, we've got the suffix S. And we've got a closed syllable. So, remember, T was unvoiced over here, so we remember that it's not voiced. T, t, t. So it's going to make the what sound? That's right, it's going to make the S sound. The S, excuse me, the S sound. All right, so read that word. Lists. That's kind of hard to say because you have an S and then a T and another S. Let's try that again. Lists. There you go. Okay, I see another suffix S box right here. I'm going to add that there. And we're going to put a brief. What do you know about D? D is voiced. Good job. Put that line through it. So let's go ahead and read that word. Lids. Good job. All right. P. What do we know about P? Is P voiced or is it unvoiced? Well, let's put the brief here because we know that this is a, whoops, my little thing just didn't want to cooperate. Let's try that again. Let's make our brief. There we go. So let's try P. P, P, P. Unvoiced. So that's going to remain the sound. So read that word. Slips. Good job. Let's go to this word. Kind of a syllable. It's closed. Suffix S. Do you remember what D is? That's right, it's voiced. So we're going to put the voice line. Let's read that word. Pads. Great job. Okay, let's come over here. What kind of syllable is it? Closed. Suffix S. Is L voiced or unvoiced? It's voiced. So we're going to put a line through it. So let's read that word. Pals. Good job. Okay. What kind of syllable is this word? Closed. Put a brief. Okay. Now, tell me. Oops, my brief didn't finish. There we go. Tell me. What about N? It's voiced. Read the word. Pans. Awesome. Okay. You're going to do these words. What kind of syllable? Great. Yep, suffix box. Thank you. Oh, you remembered to cross out one of those L's. It's a little hard to tell at this page when I use my pen. It's got kind of thick. Is it voiced or unvoiced? Tell me. It sure is voiced. Good job. So what's the word? Pills. All right, next word. Excuse me. Closed syllable. Box the S. N is, that's right, it is also voiced. So read the word. Plans. Okay, back to this word. Next word. Closed syllable. Funny little breathe there. Suffix box. Ah, you're right. That S is not voiced because T is not voiced. So read that word. Slants. All right, let's go to this last row here. Closed syllable. Suffix box. And the P, do you remember? Right, P is not voiced, so we're going to keep that as sound. So read that word, asps. Remember, in this case, we're talking about snakes. Very venomous, dangerous snakes. Okay, let's look at this long word here. Okay, it's a closed syllable. You're right. Good job. And the suffix box. And you're right. It is voiced. So read that word. Stands. Good job. And the last word on this page. Closed syllable. Mark it with a breve. Suffix box. Oh, good. That's right. T is not voiced. So read that word. Splits. All right. Now, we're going to go through and you're going to read these words going down. Read it. Lands. Lists. Pads. Pills. Asp. Let's go to this column. Read it. Pens. Read it. Lids. Keep going. Pals. Plans. Stands. Ooh, did you notice all these in this column had the voiced sound of the suffix S? Okay, let's go to this column. Ready? Read it. Pits. Slips. Pens. Slants. Splits. It only had one voiced one. All right. Wow. You did a great job with that lesson today. Thanks so much for your participation. Remember that the suffix S, consonant S, makes two sounds. If it's at the end of a base word that has an unvoiced consonant, it will say S. But if it comes at the end of a base word with a voiced consonant, it will say Z. Great job. See you next time.